Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Nothing Phone 1 and see how this particular phone holds up in 2024. Now, this particular phone has gotten a couple of differences since it first came out. There's been lots of movements, lots of changes, and I'm very, very happy about this particular, phone for the most part. But you have to remember, there's already been two main changes since this particular phone came out. One, we've already gotten the successor of this particular device. We already have the Nothing Phone 2, and we already have a budget phone that's associated with this particular, phone as well, which is the Nothing Phone 2A. So that being said, there's a lot of movement here that you have to kind of remember. And with something like with a phone like the Nothing Phone 2A, that is a better phone in some ways than the Nothing Phone 1 for a much cheaper price than even a used Nothing Phone 1. That's a very big thing, you have to kind of keep in mind with this particular device. So if you want to pick up, this phone and maybe some other phones I recommend buying, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the Nothing Phone 1, you can see on the front of this particular phone, we have a 6.55-inch OLED display. Now, it's a pretty good looking display. Like, I don't really think there's like that much craziness going wrong with it. And I do think this is like a pretty good display when it, actually comes down to it. It's 120 hertz. It gets 1200 nits of brightness, which isn't like the craziest thing in the world. But I do think for the most part, like if you're going through and getting some sort of iPhone or any phone, Samsung Galaxy, Google Pixel, this is a pretty common type of display that you get. And I do think this is like a pretty good thing when it comes down to it. Again, it's not a perfect display, but I do think it's good enough for the most part. And I do think that's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. So from that side, this particular front of the phone, not too bad. It looks pretty good. I think it has a pretty good looking display, and I think it's a good looking phone when it kind of comes down to it. Now you're getting flat sides all over this particular device, which is very nice. It's a very modern feeling phone. And because this phone came out in 2022, you have to remember this was also the time that this phone came out. It wasn't like the craziest, best looking phone when it first came out, but it's still a very cool thing that this thing looks kind of the way it does, which is a very, very important thing. Now you're getting USB Type-C on the bottom of this phone, which still is perfectly fine. I love having USB-C. It's easily one of my most favorite things going on for this particular phone, much like any new modern phone that we have. On the back side, we are getting a full-on glass back. So this is something that's really nice. I love having a glass back on this particular phone, and it does actually feel pretty good. Like if I'm going through and if I'm getting some sort of a phone, I do like the fact that this thing actually looks pretty good in and of itself. And I do think this in and of itself is a very, very cool thing. So personally for me, like if I'm getting some sort of phone, I like the fact that this thing feels as premium, and it does have a really cool thing built inside. This phone does have that glyph interface on the back side. So this is something that's actually really cool because you can actually go through and just have that, the glyph interface, which is like a big notification thing going on for this particular phone. It's notification lights. It looks very cool. And I do think this in and of itself is another super cool thing going on for this phone. It was kind of like a interesting, I guess it was like a selling point for this phone, like a novelty kind of, but it was a really cool thing that was going on for this phone at that time. And I do think this in and of itself was a super cool thing going on for this particular device too. So there's a lot of cool little like unique selling points with this particular phone. Like I feel like if I'm going to go through and like buy some sort of a device, I feel like this thing is like fairly nice. I feel like it's very cool. It feels very premium. It has IP certification. It has wireless charging. It has a reverse wireless charging. It has a lot of really cool stuff that I'm very happy about. Is it a perfect phone? Absolutely not. There's clearly things with this phone that don't hold up too well looking for the future of it. I think one, I feel like, the lack of like a crazy cool, selling point for this phone, like a cool software feature or something like that. Like it has the glyph interface, but beyond that, it's not anything crazy. I feel like the camera's fairly limited for the most part. We'll talk about that right now, but for the most part on the outside, it's definitely not like a bad thing going on for this particular phone. Now, on top of that, for the camera, this particular camera is a dual camera setup on the backside. So you have a 50 megapixel wide angle lens and then a 50 megapixel ultra wide camera as well. So this is actually pretty good. It's a pretty decent camera when it comes down to it. Again, you're getting 4K at 30 on the back and you're getting 1080p on the front with that 16 megapixel wide angle camera on the front. Now, here's the thing I will definitely tell you about this particular camera. It's not a bad camera, and it definitely is like pretty okay when it comes down to it. The only thing with this camera though, this is definitely not its selling point. This is definitely not the best feature going on for this particular device, as you probably would have suspected. The problem I would say with this particular phone is that you're kind of getting, as you can see, probably one of the worst cameras you can buy in, the 2022 era for, I guess, a more than $500 phone. There were like pretty decent budget phones. Like you look at the Galaxy S21 FE, that phone had a way better camera than this thing. Look at the Galaxy S23 FE, that phone's better. Like there's even in 2022, there were used budget phones at the time, like the Samsung Galaxy S21, like the Galaxy S10, even the Galaxy S20. Those phones are giving you significantly better cameras than this thing was, especially when you look at the used market. brand new market a little bit more tough. But in the used market, you were getting a significantly better camera there. So that's another super big important thing you have to remember. Like, why would you go and buy something like the Samsung Galaxy? Like, why would you buy the Nothing Phone 1 when you can buy a Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, like any other used market phone for that matter? So I take a look at this particular device. It's not terrible or anything, but you are definitely getting a significantly better camera on almost every single phone rather than this thing. So the camera definitely is now one of its best selling points, and it is kind of one of the weirder things going on for this particular device when it comes down to it. So that right there is like another really big thing to keep in mind there too. Now on top of that, another big thing going on for the Nothing Phone 1 is with its software. Now I do like this phone a lot because it is a stock Android phone, so there's not really like anything super crazy going on with it. It has a really good amount of stuff going on with it from that side, which I really like, but beyond that, from a software standpoint, you're really kind of limited. Like, there's really not like an insane amount of things going on for this particular phone. Like, I feel like with something like the Nothing Phone 1, this is a good software supported phone. It's still on Android, it's still supported kind of, which is nice, but as you probably would have suspected, it's not going to last forever, and these types of devices end up getting some problems throughout their whole entire lifespan, where sometimes they can be kind of a limited type of device too. So that right there might be something to kind of keep in mind. I generally don't think it's the biggest deal in the world, and I do think if you're getting some sort of phone, you're probably going to be okay with the Nothing Phone 1 with the type of software it's going to be giving you, but keep in mind it's not going to be the best, craziest thing in the world, and like you probably would have suspected, it's probably going to give you some like weird type of, it's not going to be lasting forever compared to something like the Google Galaxy S24 like that we have nowadays. So there's like another minor thing to keep in mind. Performance wise, it was honestly not a bad performing device. Inside, you're actually getting that, the Snapdragon 778G Plus chipset inside with 8 or 12 gigabytes of RAM. And I do think this is another really cool thing going on for this particular device too, because you can easily just go ahead and get this type of phone, and the performance of this phone is actually pretty decent. So with something like the Nothing Phone 1, this type of device is going to be giving you, pretty decent speeds, and I do like this performance more than the Nothing Phone 2A. You have to remember that with the Nothing Phone 2A, this particular device is kind of outdated a little bit when it comes down to the chipset that's inside. With the, with this particular phone, with the Nothing Phone 1, this particular device is definitely going to be giving you a way better experience, I would say, from the performance side almost every single time. So I do think that in and of itself is a very cool thing. Like, if you're trying to go and get like some sort of better performing device, definitely with something like the Nothing Phone 1, it's going to be giving you a more solid experience, which is something that I really do like with this type of phone. So this in and of itself is another really, really cool aspect for this type of device. And honestly, when it kind of comes down to it, I look at a phone like the Nothing Phone 1, and I'm a fan of it. I think this is a good phone. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on with this particular device. I don't necessarily think that it's like this like perfect phone though anymore. I think when it first came out, it was a novelty, it was a cheap phone, and that's kind of what this phone was going for. But nowadays you could probably see that this phone is not really a phone that I'd look at and be like, oh my goodness, like this is the no-brainer. This is not like, I would say a Google Pixel is significantly better than this phone, and the used Google Pixel of 2022, which is the Pixel 7, I think is a way better deal than this particular device. You'd be getting a way better device from that particular one than this one when it comes down to it. So keep that in mind. I do like the, I do like the other phones, like the OnePlus phones and everything, but I do look at the Nothing Phone 1 as being a pretty decent phone when it comes down to it, but I think the Pixels are probably better now. So that pretty much covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.